Hello and welcome to the Smart Money Simplified podcast with your host, Brent Mekosh. Brent, it's good to see you again.
Always great to see you, Bill. And I love these one-on-one conversations that we have the opportunity to have sometimes because you know I talk quite a bit offline when we're not
Yeah.
recording this thing, and it's great to share some of the thoughts that we have together with the rest of the listeners.
Well, I enjoy it and as well, so thank you. But I'm especially interested in this conversation because this conversation is taking place just after the big future proof conference seminar, however you want to describe it. And you've been really active on LinkedIn talking about it, posting updates from it. So I really sort of want to pick your brains and see what you learned and what you think is coming. And let's start this conversation. For those who may not be familiar with future proof, what the heck? What the heck is future proof, Brent?
Yeah, so we got back yesterday, actually. Last evening we had was myself and three other members of my team went. And Future Proof is it's the world's largest wealth festival. It's in Huntington Beach, California, and it's basically you've got financial professionals, you've got RIAs like us, you have investors, you've got fintech leaders, you've got content creators, you've got everyone in this financial ecosystem sort of exploring what that intersection of the business itself, the technology, the culture around it, the marketing around it, the content creation around it, what that all looks like. And it's basically a giant um, brainstorming session in a lot of ways with some really, really fantastic presenters. They also curate a lot of individual one-on-one meetings to give you an idea of something just crazy. So you come in there as we did as guests to this thing, and there's pretty extensive emails that you're getting leading up to it about what you're looking for, who you're
Yeah.
looking to connect with. And with us, fintech was a really big one for us. Looking at some different alternative strategies is also a very big one for us. So we put that out there, and then you get essentially matched up with these people, and they curated 30,000 different one-on-one, almost like speed dating with people whose either products or services or investments that you want to get to know. And that alone was pretty fascinating. I think I probably did about 15 to 16 of those meetings myself. Then, of course, you've also got keynote speakers, and you've got then group breakout sessions where you might have 8 people at a table talking about the impact of AI in your business and how you're utilizing it. And you got folks from San Fran, you got folks. I think there was about 100 people from Australia that were there, a lot of other Canadians, international people as well. But total about 4,500 attendees, and it
Wow.
was one heck of an event. I walk away from it extremely impressed and with a ton of valuable ideas and really actionable ideas, which I think is the most important thing.
Well, let me ask you this, if I can. I don't know if you can do this.
Yeah.
Do you have one big takeaway that you came away from it with, or was is it more a case of a lot of different takeaways?
Yeah, there is one overriding takeaway from this thing. And I think about there's a couple different comparisons that I'm drawing here. Is one,
Uh,
before the Industrial Revolution hit, skilled weavers, these were the first people that really were impacted by that. And I'm sure when they looked at all these machines, they thought, like, no one understands fabric like I do. No one understands how to make clothes like I do. No one understands this. And they probably looked at these machines and laughed because they thought they were untouchable. They thought that the
yeah.
work that they did, certainly no machine could replicate it. And there's no way that they would be left behind in this new economy. Fast forward, obviously, pretty much all of them were put out of business. And conversely, had they been in that same situation and said, hey, I understand fabric, I understand customer taste, I understand colors, and I understand all of these things. And my job is maybe not making the clothes, but my job is using what I know about the end user of these articles of clothing and leveraging these machines to grow a heck of a business. And I'm sure there were some that did that, and those that did ended up, growing and not just surviving, but really thriving in that environment. And that kept resonating in my mind because I do think, we've had some conversations about AI in our podcasts that we do together,
Sure.
and I think we are just in the early days of this thing, and I think that how it's going to impact our society in the next 5, 10 years is unknowable. But for people like myself that are in these skill businesses that think that the job that we have is building out financial plans, evaluating investments, looking for tax effective strategies. And we're going to have to maintain technical competence in that. But if that's our entire business, the machines are going to put us out of business because we are less than 2 years away from fully from AI avatars with full agency that that are going to be trying to do our job. And so that leads the question, well, what do we do? How do we survive from here? And the answer is going to be that this is going to free us up from a lot of those technical things that spend a lot of our time to really focus on building deep relationship with the clients. That's the only way, I believe, anyway, you're going to survive in this business. And if you view AI like that as a tool to leverage you and leverage what your time and your talents are, it's going to be a massive, massive impact. I think that we can very positively bring to our clients, but also rapidly, rapidly expand our business. Because the tools that we saw here at this, and by the time they're to us at a conference like this, they're marketable already. They're out there.
Mm.
There's a few tools that we're looking at incorporating in our business that, hey, you can sign up for these things tomorrow. Staggering. It's staggering what they can do in terms of creating efficiencies in your business. So that's really was my big takeaway is how fast this is coming.
I'm laughing because I can so relate to that because I used to go to big conferences aimed at the broadcast slash cable business, and you would go and you see these incredible technologies and all of
Yeah.
this stuff that was coming down the pipeline, and you realized it was unstoppable and you needed to get acquainted with it as best you could because it was at the door. It wasn't down the street. It was at the door. So I
No.
can totally relate to that. And on that point, you posted some words to that effect in one of your posts on LinkedIn. And my response to it was you need to understand it, this technology, you need to embrace the technological change, or you're going to get left behind, which
Yep.
fits nicely with your favorite quote
Yes.
from your guy. Tell people about that, but I love that quote.
Well, I had a couple here. So Daniel Ives, who was one of the most colorful presenters that we have, and he's a guy that speaks a lot about AI technology. And one of the things that I really appreciate him, he's a heck of a I don't want to say an entertainer because there's way more depth behind him than that, but he can deliver these messages in a way that's incredibly compelling, and also he creates a visual impact when he's describing these things. But he was talking about the AI revolution. He'd just gotten back from Korea, and what he had said was, that we're the use of these tools. It's not even like it's accelerating. So we're not like kind of peaking out in terms of trajectory. It's rapidly accelerating. And the way that he put it is he said the AI revolution, it's 9 p.m. in the AI revolution. He goes, and the party's going till at least 4 o'clock in the morning. Because between then and now, the police might come. There might be broken glass on the dance floor. There's going to be some things that are going to happen, but the party is just getting going. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think that we've got these tools in place, and the question is how do you manage them? And in our business, we're dealing with, the notion of how much of it is correct, because these machines and tools do hallucinate a little bit, and they make some things up, which is why you have to have the technical chops to be able to use them. But they're getting so good now that you can't ignore them anymore, and you can't ignore the ability for them to organize and parse data in a way that's going to be incredibly effective to just really leverage everyone's time.
So tell me what you see. I mean, let's dig into that a little bit. What are some of the changes you see coming, Brent?
I think that if you look at what we do in our day to day, well, I think for specifically to our business, because I think the changes
Yeah.
any person, regardless of what they're doing, could answer that question. But in terms of our business, what we're doing in terms of meeting prep, I think, can be cut into a fraction of the time it is right now.
Mm,
Usually if we have clients that are coming in, we're going back, we're reviewing all those internal CRM notes, we're reviewing last meeting notes, we're reviewing the account performances, we're reviewing the investments, we're trying to get ahead of what any of the specific questions might be. We're also reviewing what the news cycle is like. What do we think is on their mind? Going back into the data that we have on them to try to determine exactly what was on their mind. But what if you had a tool that could basically go back and dig into your entire CRM history going back years and could tell you that, yeah, the last 5 meetings, here were the major points. And what if moving forward, it could take, verbal transcripts of that and could parse down, okay, well, Brent, in this meeting, you spoke, 48% of the time, where your goal is to speak 30% of the time. And this is where we got the most emotional energy came from the clients around these specific topics. And then all that stuff and move it forward 5 years or so, where you've got the email logs, you've got meeting data, you've got everything else. Now it's chattable, where you can reach into that data and just ask it questions
mm,
about your clients. It's somewhere in that data lake that it can pull back from. And then can obviously summarize the meetings and create action plans and all. And that's actually on the most basic level of what these tools can do. But assuming it does all that and it does it effectively, and you still have to edit it because you're ultimately the one that knows the client. Of course, there's questions about privacy issues and data, and is it a closed system or not. But if you can employ something like that, your meeting prep potentially goes from being an hour, maybe more, to 5 or 10 minutes. Your post work, if I spend a deep hour with somebody or an hour and a half, sometimes my follow up work in that can be 2 hours. What if that gets reduced between writing my internal CRM notes, between getting an email summary out to the clients, between making whatever the changes we need to do, in terms of the investment strategies, between creating a task list in CRM that goes out to the team so they make sure they're following up on these items. What if now that's 5 minutes? Well, then what that frees you up to do is maybe now your hour meeting with the clients an hour and 15 or 20 minutes, or you're doing more meetings during the course of the day, or you're making some phone calls that have taken that should have been made 2 weeks ago, but you're so busy doing these other things. It's really from an informational standpoint and getting to know the client really deeply, it's amazing, but also it's a massive time savings. And I do think too, sometimes as human beings, we're guilty of, if we've just gotten through a 2-hour meeting with a client, you might have discussed 15 or 20 different topics, and 5 or 6 or 7 of those might be resonating in your head
Hmm.
because we're bringing our own biases to the conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas if the AI can come back and say, well, no, actually, wait a second, your client brought this issue up 5 times. You answered it once. That like that's and that might be something I wasn't even thinking of, but they could have walked in on that top of mind. And so the ability to almost have this impartial sort of observer that's listening in on that stuff is, I think, could be incredibly powerful. And that's just on the ops side, on the CRM side,
Right.
not even looking at anything else. So,
Well, it's interesting because I think a lot of people, when they hear these conversations about AI and AI and what it's going to do to the financial advisor industry and stuff, I think a lot of people either, get an image in their head of, oh, great, this is all going to become a depersonalized automaton robot driven industry and nobody's going to get anything personal anymore. But I'm listening to your talk about this, and actually, it sounds like there's a chance here for financial advisors to make this actually more personal
right.
than it is now.
I think those that succeed, that's what they're going to do. And I think the same would hold true for accountants. I think it would hold for estate planning attorneys, because how about a piece of software where I can upload all the clients' estate planning documents, their insurance statements, their financial statements, their tax returns, and in 30 seconds can get actionable items in each of those core areas that need to be addressed. Well, there was a law change in Arizona that affects this aspect of your trust, and you missed this deduction in your tax return. You're too heavily concentrated in this piece in your investments, and so I think to those of us that are in these service industries, we better really, really be aware that these tools are out there, because again, I come back to this. If we think that our value to clients is the technical knowledge that we have, that's partially true. I don't want to say that's false, because you got
Yeah,
to have that.
right.
Because again, the AI can get it wrong, and in my experience using these tools, they often do. So you've got to
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just
right
going to
there.
jump in here and say my
Yeah,
nightmare is people like you thinking they don't have to understand it anymore.
yeah,
And that for me is my nightmare. It's like, wait. It's like, do you not know what's happening here? So this conversation is a little bit reassuring to me.
yeah. And I think that's the thing, is in our job is going to be overly not to fully trust these tools and not be overly dependent upon them. But to your point, is it going to become more or less human? I think it can go one of two ways. I do
Mm.
think that there is going to be fully autonomous, acting with agency, AI advisors in the not very distant future in all of these areas that people will pay probably a very nominal fee to, and that will be essentially giving, and there's regulatory hurdles and everything else. So I'm
Of
not,
course.
I certainly don't know when this would hit, but I think it will, that'll be giving this kind of advice, which is going to be incredibly impersonal, even if you log into the machine, or the machine's complimenting you on how you look today every single time, but it's not real. It's still a machine. But I think that those of us that use these tools to again, leverage that time, leverage that depth of knowledge with the clients, I think then it can become far, far, far more personalized. At least that's my goal. Because if you're not, I fundamentally believe this, that if the reason that we're in this business is because we really like people, we really like clients, we love solving problems, we love, walking alongside of our clients on this journey, and this is an economic financial planet, so we get to do it with them, and arguably one of the most important aspects of their lives, and if we can do that more effectively and to better serve them, I think it's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, and it strikes me as really important in terms of growing your business because if you've got that kind of service, you are going to grow as
Right.
opposed to turn people away. And I bring up the subject of growth for two reasons. One, you were kind of touching on it and getting sort of edging around it there for a second. And second, there was a study out by BlackRock, I think it was within the last couple of weeks, where they talk about organic growth. And they say, organic growth essentially is it's great, but it is not the primary driver in the financial services industry. Do you have any thoughts on that? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on that. And so organic growth industry wide, meaning the growth that's coming in not from acquisitions. So you didn't go
Right.
buy a team, you didn't buy a book of business, is only about 3%. And that's
Wow.
if you're stripping out what the overall market returns are. So that means that if you've got a business with, you know, $1 billion worth of assets, maybe you're bringing in $30 million
Mm.
a year of new business, and that's it's low. It's definitely low. But what you found, or what you find as well, is that there's a real disparity between those that are flat to negative, which is a lot of advisors and teams that are out there like that basically are being held aloft by what the markets have done over the last several years, and people that are growing exponentially and explosively organically. So the notion that this organic growth is not happening or is not important, I don't believe that at all. I do think that there's a big thing happening in the space in terms of acquisitions, where you've got
Yeah.
private equities involved in our business now, and you've got teams that are merging with other teams. You've got RIAs that are selling all, if not part of their businesses, out there, and that's happening as well. But the real goal, at least for us, has always been, and I think we're driving value, not just in terms of bringing great value to clients, but also creating value for the business, because we are all entrepreneurs here ourselves. Is that organic growth? And so, if you're looking at just basically paying for something and cobbling it onto your own business, you can do that, but it's not as powerful as if you're naturally growing organically and you're bringing people into the fold that way.
Sure. Sure. But we are in the midst of what everybody keeps talking about all of the time, the great wealth transfer. So there's a lot of money that is meaning it's a lot of money for those not familiar with that phrase, changing hands from one generation to the next. There are people aging out, if you will. It's a
Yes.
nice way of saying they're passing on their inheritance to their kids and everybody else. Uh, to what degree do you think all of these changes are going to impact that, if any?
I think it's for our business, it's going to be massive in the sense that we are in an older business. The thing that struck me being at this conference, having been to several industry events in the past, more on the broker dealer side, is the age. The age demographic
Mm,
was I would say 10 to 15 years younger across the board. I'm 51. I would say that average demographic might have been 45 to 50, where a lot of these things you see it's maybe 60 to 65 if you go to some other events. So you saw that you have two things happening: is you have this massive wealth transfer, which is obviously a big part of what we're looking at, because it's not just in terms of these publicly traded securities, but it's in terms of these businesses that entrepreneurs have created their entire lives, which in many cases 80% of their net worth, and they've got no succession plan. Just as a side pitch for
yep.
what we do, that's really a big thing, that's really important to us, is to make sure that those businesses are successfully passed to the next generation or monetized in some way. But aside from that, you are getting this transfer of wealth down to the next generation is just happening because they're aging out. But also in our business, you're seeing it's an older advisor pool, and a lot of them they've turned a takeaway. And this is not a, everybody runs their business their own way, but there's something in our business where you'll hear a term like, oh, it's a great lifestyle business, meaning that I don't really need to grow anymore because, maybe I'm growing, getting that 3% organic growth, and yeah, the market's going up 10, 15, 20% a year. So that's kind of, it's offsetting what the withdrawals are and what the natural decay of the book is. And so I have a great lifestyle. I can kind of go to work 3, 4 days a week. The business can sort of take care of itself. Those and there's no incentive to embrace new technology. There's no incentive to change. There's no incentive to grow. And I think the runway for those type of businesses is going to be far, far shorter than many of those practitioners
Mm.
think it is. Because I will tell you that there are energetic, vibrant teams that are out there that are looking at organic growth, that are taking it very seriously. They're thinking of all the ways that they can bring tools to the table that's going to enhance the client experience, enhance the fun that we have in this business and the ability to
Yeah.
serve people. And the lifestyle business to me, I actually said to my partner, I said, if I ever come to you and say, you know what, let's just lifestyle this thing, I said, I want you just to put a gun to my head and pull the trigger because that means I've given up. And so, no offense to people out there that I think might be on that track, but it's just not one that we're willing to embrace.
Well, it's interesting because now I want to hear this answer because I was thinking about this while you're talking. One of the last posts I saw by you on LinkedIn
Yeah.
had to do with a conference or a seminar. I'm not sure if it was a breakout session or what it was, but
Yep.
it had to do with balancing family and work.
That one hit
So,
me. Yeah.
so tell me how that view fits with this view, or are they not in conflict as I'm imagining they might be?
Well, that's something I'm trying to figure out. So this is the very last presentation. This is a guy named Sean Sparks, and
Yeah.
he's the co-founder of Triad Partners, and he was doing a sit-down interview with. Sorry about my screen flipping around here, and he was doing a sit-down interview with Brad Johnson, who is also he has a podcast as well, and they were talking about different things. And his quote was, I'll read it to you exactly, was it was maybe the most important thing that I could hear, or any entrepreneur could hear. So you could say there's a war going on between your family and your business.
Mm,
It's time to call a ceasefire and get those two together. And the reason that impacted me so much is because you do see there's a real fine line. I mean, when I ended my trip in California, the week before I was in New Orleans for 2 days. I was in Chicago for 2 days. I'm home for a couple of nights. I'm out to California for 3 days, and you're running around, and I've got two young kids at home, and I've got a wife, and
yeah.
and you can get extremely passionate and focused on the business, but you've also got to recognize that the most important thing, the reason that we're doing all of this is to support our families and provide a great life and provide solutions to our clients. And it really is the people that undergird all that, and that's one that really impacted me because in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, obviously we've had a big year this year in terms of, leaving our broker deal, merging our practices, bought the building that we're in right now. We've done a lot of stuff, and it's been an incredible year of like intensity and go, 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 go. And what's amazing is through the active energy that the entire team has put into this, it's meant a lot more client connection, which quite frankly has meant a lot more business. Like
Good.
the pipeline, like without even a marketing plan really in place yet, just based on the amount of contact and connections that we've had with our clients, the business correlates. It does. That it's you can get on that. You can get focused on that exclusively, but you also can't ignore the other people around your life, because I do think that it's be possible to look up 5, 10 years from now and be like, oh, where'd everybody go?
Yeah.
Like
It's like
you
what
know, you
happened? Well,
exactly. And so that one it was the last one we listened to at the event. And I messaged both those guys on LinkedIn. I said, but that was the most impactful statement to me, because it does come back to okay, the real focus is when you leave here, you go home, you need to be 100% present. When you're thinking about what tools that you can employ from a technology standpoint in the
yeah.
practice, which of those tools are going to allow you to be where you're here, you're laser focused, incredibly effective, and you walk out and you're also present for your family. But that's not to say that there's a line there, because there isn't. I mean, I think most people that are really passionate about what they do, regardless of whether they're in this business or not, the business is part of who they are. I've never been great at compartmentalizing that. I mean, I think when you walk in the door at home, you leave whatever the challenges of the business may be in the office, but the business is still who you are. And when I come in and I'm working with clients directly, I mean, my family's just pictures of my kids and my wife and everything all over my office. I mean, they're here as well, so these are very intertwined. And so what he said about, calling a truce between those two and having those two sides of your life work together, that really fascinated me how you can do that. And I will say, like full pitch for Sean, as he's written a couple books, one of which I've already ordered, because I want to dive more into what he was saying, because I thought those two guys, Sean Sparks and Brad Johnson, their conversation was incredibly impactful.
Well, regular listeners to this podcast know this is an important topic for you. And I was sitting here trying to remember what episode it was, but I mean, we did do an entire episode where you talked with a guy who was talking about being present,
Yeah.
being a dad, and being present and being with your family, as well as taking care of business. But
Right.
the importance of that. So yeah, Sean, if you're
And
listening, it's not a new topic for the podcast. Come on and
yeah.
talk to Brent, please.
And I think you can do both, because one of the things, my father worked incredibly hard when I was growing up. I know that, and he put in the hours, but he always made my games. He was at my
Right.
soccer games, and he would cut out early, and that was first. And he later on in his career, before my grandmother passed away, like all his clients, his entire new team, everyone knew that on Friday he went to his mother's house and had lunch, and that was non-negotiable. So there were things like that were there, that just were non-negotiable. And the other thing that I really recall, and I think this is one of the many great gifts I got from my dad, is my dad never came home, and he was working a lot, but when he never came home and complained about the day. It wasn't like, oh, it was such a grind today, it was terrible. It was always a lot of
Wow.
enthusiasm and energy and excitement about the business. And so I think if your kids see that and they're part of that, then that gets them really motivated and excited to think what they can do. I mean, even, I can't tell you how many times I brought my son into this building when the demos crews were tearing it apart to get us ready to come in here, and say, yeah, this is Jeff and Brent bought this building, and look at what we're doing here. And he thought it was cool. And we, when this room behind me was completely gutted and it was a concrete floor, we ate pizza on the floor and everything else. And so I think it's like, it's not one or the other, but how do you integrate both? And I think that's a combination. That's a combination to a lock that I have not completely figured out yet, but that really intrigued me to dive deeper into it.
And that's great. That's great. So I look forward to more of those conversations, because I do know a guy who is somewhat of a serial entrepreneur, and he has two young kids, and he is very aware of wanting to be with them and be a part of their life and have an impact on their life. And to him, that part is as important as the success in business part. And he has enjoyed some good successes so far in
Yep.
his life. So it's good. I look forward to that. Brett, we've come to the end of this one. I mean, we could keep talking for a whole lot longer, because I'm really intrigued by the whole future proof conference. But for those people who are listening to this and thinking that maybe they're a guy they might want to have a further conversation with about their own finances, and, explore topics with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Our number here is 602 255 Website is tws.finance, or smartmoneysimplified.com. Also, really active on LinkedIn, as you alluded to that. We post quite a bit of content up there. And
Yes.
yeah, so up on our website, you can also find pretty much every conceivable way to contact me
Yeah,
there
that's
as well.
great. And I would encourage people who are listening to this podcast and to think about it, reach out to them. The other thing I would encourage you to do, by the way, is reach out to Brent if you've got topics you'd like for him to explore. It would be interesting to hear from you as listeners what kinds of things are resonating with you, especially with all of these changes that are going on in the financial services industry at the moment. The other thing you can do is really simple. Just follow the podcast. If you're not already a subscriber, that part's easy. Hit the follow button. And that way, every time Brent drops a new episode of the podcast, you're notified. You can give it a listen. It's that simple. And if you like it, I would ask that you tell people about it, because word of mouth promotion, organic growth, we'll welcome that. We think that's a great tool, as a matter of fact. Until
Absolutely.
next time, I'm Bill Tucker on behalf of Brent and everybody at the Wealth Stewards. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. And I would encourage you to remember this: you can go out today and make today a great day, or not. The choice is yours. Thanks for listening. Until next time.